He noticed her before she even spoke. The sound of her heels on the hardwood, unhurried, certain. There was something in the way she moved that made the air feel heavier, as if the room itself had been waiting for her. He wasn't supposed to look, not like that, not for that long, but his eyes caught on her anyway. She smiled when she saw him. "You're still here," she said, lightly, almost teasing. Her voice carried warmth that didn't match the cool evening air slipping in through the open window. He began, but didn't finish. His throat felt dry. He had no reason to feel nervous. She was just his friend's mom, the kind of woman who always seemed to be in control of every detail around her. But tonight, something felt different. The house was quieter, the light dimmer, her perfume closer. She crossed the room to set down 2 empty glasses, her hand brushing the edge of the counter near him. He caught the faint scent of something floral and clean, not heavy, just enough to stay with him. "You helped with the boxes, didn't you?" she asked, glancing toward the stack by the door. He nodded. "Yeah, thought I'd stay until he got back." She looked up at him then, really looked. A pause stretched between them, too long to be casual. "That's kind of you." It shouldn't have meant anything, that small sentence. But it did. The words hung there, caught between gratitude and something else she didn't name. He tried to look away, to focus on the sound of the fridge humming, or the faint rain beginning outside. But when she stepped closer, just to reach the switch behind him, he forgot what he'd meant to say. Her sleeve brushed his arm. A spark, quiet but definite, pulsed through him. "Sorry," she said softly, though she didn't sound sorry. Her hand lingered near his shoulder before she withdrew it. "It's fine," he said too quickly, and then wished he hadn't said anything at all. She smiled again, that same knowing curve of her lips, and turned slightly toward him. "You grew up," she said, almost like she hadn't planned to. Her tone wasn't maternal. It was observant, surprised. He didn't answer. He wasn't sure he could. Outside, the rain picked up, tapping against the window in uneven rhythms. She leaned on the counter, one arm resting loosely, the other holding a glass she didn't drink from. "You've always been quiet," she murmured. He gave a small laugh. "Guess I never had much to say." Her eyes softened, or maybe it was the light. "Sometimes that's the best kind of person to have around," she said. He looked up at her then, meeting her gaze fully for the first time. Something in her expression shifted, recognition, maybe regret. She glanced toward the clock. "It's late," she said, though her voice wasn't firm. "Yeah," he said, but neither of them moved. The house seemed to shrink around them. The soft hum of the lights, the faint scent of rain and her perfume. He could hear the sound of his own breath, measured and unsure. She turned slightly, close enough that he could see the small line near her mouth when she smiled again. "You should probably go before the rain gets worse," she said, but her hand brushed his arm as she said it. He nodded, or tried to, but neither of them stepped back. Her voice dropped. "It was nice seeing you." He swallowed. "You too." For a heartbeat, everything was still. The rain, the air, their breathing. Then the doorbell rang. She blinked, the spell breaking, and stepped back just enough for the space between them to return. Her perfume lingered where she'd stood. He exhaled slowly, but didn't move. "Go on," she whispered, not quite looking at him. He did, but as he reached for the door, he could feel her eyes still on him, watching. The next time he saw her, it wasn't planned. He dropped by to return a borrowed jacket. His friend had left it in his car after a late night, and she opened the door instead. Her hair was tied back this time, a few loose strands brushing. Her face. She wore a faded t-shirt, soft from age, and for a second she looked nothing like the woman who'd stood under the warm kitchen light last week. Confident, composed, unreachable. "Oh," she said, surprised but smiling. "You." He lifted the jacket slightly, awkward. "Thought I'd drop this off." She glanced past him, maybe expecting her son. "He's not here." "Work." "Yeah, I figured." A pause. The kind that shouldn't matter, but did. She stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. The house smelled faintly of coffee and rain. Afternoon light spilled through the blinds in thin stripes, catching dust in the air. He hesitated, then crossed the threshold. "You've been busy," he said, nodding at the boxes still half open in the corner. She sighed. Always something to pack or unpack. Her tone was soft, but something about it carried weight, like she wasn't just talking about boxes. He sat on the edge of a chair. "Do you miss it? The old place?" She smiled faintly. Sometimes. Mostly the noise. Houses feel too quiet after a while. He didn't know what to say to that, but he understood it. The kind of silence that doesn't rest, it hums inside you. Her eyes lingered on him. You live alone, right? He nodded. Yeah. Doesn't it get lonely? He gave a half shrug. You get used to it. She looked down at her hands, thumb tracing the edge of her coffee mug. No one really gets used to it, she said quietly. Something in her voice, raw, unguarded, made him want to say something honest too. Something about how people never really leave your head once they've been there. But the word stuck. She broke the silence first. You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago. Yeah. She nodded, eyes distant. He used to sit just like that. Like he wanted to say something, but was afraid it might change everything. He met her gaze, caught off guard by how precise it felt. Maybe he was right, he said softly. Her lips curved. Not quite a smile, not quite regret. Maybe. The room felt smaller then. Not in a way that pressed, but in the way that made breathing careful. She reached across the table for the mug, her fingers brushing his hand. A small, unintentional touch that both froze and burned. Neither pulled away. The clock ticked somewhere behind them. Her breath caught almost imperceptibly, and he noticed the fine tremor in her fingers before she withdrew them. Sorry, she murmured, though again, she didn't sound sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. She looked at him then, fully, without defense. There was loneliness in her eyes, but also something else, recognition. Outside, wind rattled the window. He didn't move. Neither did she. For a moment, the world felt impossibly still. Two people sitting across a table, holding a silence that said everything they couldn't. The days after that felt different, heavier somehow. He caught himself thinking about her at odd hours, the way she'd looked when her fingers brushed his, the quiet pause that followed. It wasn't supposed to linger, but it did. He told himself he'd stop by just to drop off a charger he'd borrowed. Nothing more. When she opened the door, the late afternoon light hit her face in gold and shadow. She smiled, surprised again, though this time, the surprise softened into something else. You're getting good at showing up unannounced, she said, half teasing. He tried to sound casual. Guess I'm bad at timing. She let him in anyway. The house was quiet except for a faint hum of a song playing from another room. Something old, something slow. She'd been painting, a half-finished canvas resting on the easel by the window. He nodded toward it. Didn't know you painted. She shrugged, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. Just keeps my hands busy. Her shirt had a faint streak of color near the hem, and for a moment, he imagined what it would be like to trace it away. He looked down instead. You can sit, she said, gesturing toward the couch. He did. She stayed standing, arms crossed lightly, as if unsure whether to keep the distance or not. He watched her, the way she leaned slightly on one hip, the way the light caught the curve of her wrist. Every small movement seemed deliberate, though he knew it wasn't. I shouldn't keep visiting like this, he said finally. Her eyes lifted to his. Why not? He hesitated. Because it feels like I shouldn't. That silence again, thick, alive. She took a slow step closer. You're right, she said softly. You shouldn't. But she didn't stop moving. His pulse quickened, a quiet thrum he tried to hide. She was close enough now that he could see the tiny flecks of green in her eyes, the faint scent of paint mixed with her perfume. You make it hard to, he said, the words slipping out before he could pull them back. Her breath caught, just once, and then she laughed barely. You shouldn't say things like that. Then don't look at me like that, he murmured. The space between them vanished by inches. He didn't touch her, not yet, but his hand hovered near her arm, waiting for permission neither of them could give. Her gaze dropped to his lips for a fraction of a second before darting away. He saw it, and she knew he had. Then, a sudden sound. A car door outside. Voices. She stepped back fast, heartbeat visible in her throat. He's home, she whispered, voice barely steady. He stood up, pulse racing, eyes still locked on hers. I should. Yes, you should. He turned toward the door, but stopped when she spoke again, softer now, almost to herself. I didn't mean to. He looked back. I know. A silence hung, unfinished. The door opened from outside, her son's voice carrying faintly through the hall. She brushed her hand over her hair, trying to look composed, but her eyes told a different story, something restless, unsaid, still burning. He nodded once, a small, wordless goodbye, and stepped out as she turned toward the kitchen, her back straight, her breath uneven. The door closed behind him, but through the thin walls, the song was still playing, slow, haunting, like something they'd both already started and couldn't stop. It had been 2 weeks since the almost moment, the near touch that neither spoke of but both carried. He hadn't planned to see her again, not so soon. But she texted first. "Could you stop by? The sink's leaking again." He almost didn't go. Almost. When she opened the door, she looked different, tired, maybe, softer somehow. The air smelled like rain again, and something about it felt too familiar. "Sorry to bother you," she said, stepping back to let him in. "I didn't want to wait for the plumber." He knelt by the sink, pretending to focus on the steady drip. But she was right there, close enough that he could feel her watching. Every small sound seemed too loud. "You don't have to fix everything," he said without looking up. Her voice came quietly. "I know. I just don't like asking for help." He smiled faintly. "You didn't really. You just said the sink was leaking." That earned the smallest laugh from her, quiet, real. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You make it sound like I'm manipulating you." He looked up at her then, caught in that half smile. "Aren't you?" Her breath hitched. "Maybe," she said. The word hung there, dangerous in its honesty. He stood, wiping his hands on a towel. They were close now, closer than before, too close for small talk. Her eyes lifted to meet his, and the air between them felt like a wire pulled tight. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "You keep saying that." Her lips parted, not for words this time. He could see her pulse flutter in her throat. She took one step forward, then another. "What are we doing?" she asked, barely audible. He exhaled, pretending we don't already know. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, longing, something unnamed. "You think this is simple?" "No," he said. "But it feels real." Her expression softened, a mix of disbelief and need. "You're too young to understand how much real things can cost." He shook his head. "Then let me find out." That stopped her. For a heartbeat, she looked away, at the dripping faucet, at the rain sliding down the window, anywhere but him. "You don't know what you're asking," she said finally. "I'm not asking," he replied, stepping closer. Her hand brushed the counter, steadying herself. His fingers hovered near hers, not touching, just close enough for her to feel the warmth. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. The kitchen light flickered once, like the world itself was holding its breath. She turned her face slightly, so near that a loose strand of her hair brushed against his hand. He didn't move. Neither did she. "Please," she whispered, not sure if it was a warning or a plea. He leaned forward, just enough for his breath to catch hers. And then, a knock at the door. Sharp, sudden. They froze. Her eyes widened, panic breaking through the quiet tension. "Don't," she whispered. He didn't know if she meant don't open the door or don't move closer. Either way, he obeyed. The knock came again, louder this time, and she turned, hand pressed against her heart. He stood behind her, every muscle tight, every word unsaid. Outside, someone called her name. Inside, the air still smelled like rain and regret. The knock still echoed in his head long after the door had opened and closed again. It was her ex-husband. She'd said it quietly after the man left, voice trembling just enough to betray what she tried to hide. He was just dropping off papers, she'd explained. He'd nodded, but her eyes had lingered on the door long after it shut, like she was afraid it might open again. Now, 3 days later, he found himself standing outside her porch again, unsure what he was doing there. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled wet, charged. He told himself he was checking on the plumbing. A lie, even he didn't believe. She opened the door before he could knock, as if she'd been waiting. "You shouldn't be here," she said, though her voice didn't sound convinced. "I know," he said simply. For a moment, neither moved. Then she stepped aside, barely enough space for him to pass. The brush of her sleeve against his arm was brief, but electric. The house was quiet except for the slow tick of a clock. He noticed a framed photo on the counter. Her, younger, smiling beside a man who wasn't there anymore. A faint crack ran through the glass. "You don't talk about him," he said before he could stop himself. Her hands stilled on the edge of the counter. "Because it doesn't matter anymore, doesn't it?" She looked at him then, sharply, but not angry, just tired. "You think you're the only one who feels caught between what they want and what they should do." He said nothing. "I spent years pretending I wasn't lonely," she went on, her voice steadying. Convincing everyone, including myself, that I was fine. Her fingers tightened around a mug she wasn't drinking from. And then you started coming by. Quiet. Kind. You looked at me like I wasn't invisible anymore. He took a step forward, heart pounding. You're not invisible. Her laugh came out like a breath. Don't say that. Why not? Because you don't know what you're offering. Or what I might take if you mean it. The words hung between them. Fragile. Dangerous. He moved closer, slow enough for her to stop him if she wanted to. She didn't. Her hand trembled as she set the mug down. He saw you, you know. What? The other night. My ex. He saw you leaving. He froze. He called this morning, she said, eyes lowered. Asked if I'd finally moved on. I didn't answer. She looked up then, her expression unreadable, but her breathing uneven. You think I'm brave, she whispered. But I'm terrified. He reached out, hesitated, then brushed his fingers against hers. Her hand was cold, but she didn't pull away. The air between them changed again, sharp with awareness. The risk wasn't abstract anymore. It had a name, a consequence. Her lips parted slightly. If anyone finds out, they won't, he said, though his voice shook when he said it. She stepped closer, eyes searching his face as if to find the lie in his certainty. What if I don't stop this time? She asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Her fingers brushed his wrist, tentative but wanting. His breath hitched. She felt it. The rain began again outside, soft and steady, filling the silence. Neither of them moved away. The photo on the counter caught a sliver of light, her younger self frozen in a smile that no longer fit the woman standing there now. The next evening came without plan or permission. He was leaving town for a few weeks, a trip for work, and he told himself he should say goodbye. Just goodbye, nothing more. But when she opened the door, something in her eyes made the word goodbye dissolve before it could form. You shouldn't have come, she said softly. I know. Then why are you here? He exhaled. Because I couldn't not be. Her silence said everything. The living room lights were dim, just the low hum of a lamp against the soft sound of rain outside. She stood near the window, her reflection half visible in the glass. Older, yes, but more alive than he'd ever seen her. I don't know how to do this, she said. Any of it. You don't have to. She turned, eyes sharp with something between fear and longing. You think this is simple? He took a step closer. No, but it's real. She laughed quietly, a sound that broke halfway through. Real doesn't mean right. Maybe not, he said, but it's ours. The space between them vanished, not with suddenness, but inevitability. Her breath brushed his collarbone when she looked up, and for a moment, neither of them moved. His hand rose halfway, trembling, before stopping midair. She saw it, the hesitation, the ache, and closed the distance herself. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just closeness so precise it hurt. Her hand rested against his chest. His pulse jumped beneath her palm. I can hear your heart, she whispered. He swallowed. It's yours doing that. Her lips parted, but the words never came. Instead, she leaned forward, her hair grazing his jaw, her breath warm and uneven. This will change everything, she said. He nodded. Maybe that's the point. A pause. The kind that lasts a lifetime inside a second. Then she stepped back, just slightly. Enough for air to return, enough to think. Her eyes glistened with something more than hesitation, a quiet grief for what might come after. I spent years building walls, she said. And you walked in without even knocking. He smiled, barely. You left the door open. Her laughter came through a tear. God, you're too young to be saying things like that. Maybe, he said, but I mean them. She looked at him then, really looked, as if memorizing every line of his face before the world called it a mistake. For a heartbeat, he thought she would finally close the gap. But instead, she exhaled, a sound like surrender and restraint combined. Go, she whispered. Before I don't. He stood still, the word going catching in his chest. Then, slowly he nodded. She turned away first, wiping a tear that didn't quite fall. He stepped toward the door, every footstep too heavy, too loud. When his hand reached the doorknob, her voice stopped him. Don't think I didn't want to. He looked back. She was standing in the half-light, one hand on the window pane, rain streaking the glass like a reflection of her own trembling. I know, he said. The air between them was thick with everything they'd almost done, almost said. He opened the door, the sound of rain spilling in. Their eyes met one last time. A wordless promise, a shared ache, a secret that would follow them both. And then he stepped out into the night. Behind him, the door stayed half open. He didn't see her for almost a month. The distance was supposed to help, to make sense of what had happened, or what almost did. But it didn't. Every quiet morning, every passing thought, she returned. Not as a mistake, but as a feeling he couldn't shake. When he came back to town, the sky was warm and bright, the kind of day that tries to convince you that nothing ever hurts. He found himself walking the familiar road to her house without planning to. His steps slowed at her gate. He almost turned back. Then the door opened. She was there, as if she'd known he would come. The surprise on her face softened quickly into something steadier, calmer, not relief exactly, but something close. "You're back," she said. He nodded. "Yeah." "How was it?" "Too long," he admitted. Her lips curved, faint but genuine. "You look different." "So do you." They stood there for a moment that felt like its own kind of truth. No tension this time, just the hum of something familiar, something that had waited patiently beneath the chaos. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. He hesitated. "Do you want me to?" Her eyes met his. "I wouldn't have asked if I didn't." Inside, the light fell softly through the window. The painting he'd seen before was finished now, colors warm and quiet, the kind of piece that feels like a memory you can't quite name. "It's beautiful," he said. She smiled. "It's not perfect. Neither are we." That made her laugh, small, real. She sat down at the edge of the couch, and he joined her, a respectful distance between them. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. "I thought about calling," she said after a while. "Why didn't you?" "Because I didn't know what to say." He looked at her, then down at his hands. "You could have just said you missed me." She turned, eyes softening. "And if I had?" He smiled a little. "I'd have come back sooner." Her hand moved then, slow, deliberate, resting lightly over his. The warmth of it sank deep. He didn't speak. Neither did she. It was enough to just sit there, skin against skin, the weight of everything unsaid finally lifting. When she leaned in, it wasn't with urgency or hesitation, just quiet certainty. Her forehead touched his, a gesture too tender to be an accident. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not making me pretend." He closed his eyes, breathing her in. "You never had to." For a long time, they stayed like that, two people who had found their balance in the space between what was wrong and what was real. When he finally stood to leave, she didn't stop him. She walked him to the door, fingers brushing his one last time. "See you soon?" he asked. "Maybe sooner than that," she said, smiling softly. The door stayed open behind him, sunlight spilling in. No rain this time, no shadows. Just warmth. And for once, goodbye didn't feel like an ending. Speech Balloon, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? More slow burn romance, forbidden love, or something entirely new?